I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is The Voice of the Night by Dean Koontz. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a dust jacket for this. I actually got this at a book fair at my college in, late September, I believe, and I actually read the book about a month ago. Now, The Voice of the Night was published in 1980, and it was originally published under a pen name. I believe the pen name was Brian Coffey. Now, back in Dean Koontz's earlier days, he actually published quite a few books under different pen names. He published a few books under the pen name K.R. Dwyer. He published a few books under Brian Coffey. I believe in his earlier days, he actually had quite a few pen names. But, The Voice of the Night is about a 14-year-old boy named Colin who moves to a small town in California with his mother, and Colin is pretty much a loner. He doesn't have any friends, and what happens is during the summer when he moves to this town, he meets another 14-year-old boy named Roy, and Roy really becomes his first real friend, and Roy, as it turns out, is one of the most popular kids at the school there. But what happens is, it turns out that Roy is essentially fucked in the head. This kid is completely psychotic, and it turns out that Roy wants Colin to become his blood brother. And that's really all I want to say about the plot line of The Voice of the Night. Now, The Voice of the Night I thought was a pretty good book. However, I wouldn't say the book was great. This is definitely not one of Koontz's better books, in my opinion. I definitely wouldn't hold this up there with his books like Watchers, or Twilight Eyes, or Life Expectancy, or Chase. For me, it's nowhere near as good as those books. I mean, it's not bad. It's definitely a good book, but I had a few problems with it, which for me personally kept the book from being great. One of my major problems with the book is, in the first half of the book, I really kind of hated the character of Colin. I thought the character of Colin was honestly kind of annoying, and that's not really a good thing when your protagonist is kind of annoying in the first half of the book, because basically in the first half of the book, Colin has some really childish views of the world, and I understand the character is only 14 years old, but even, when I was 14, I mean, I had some immature views, but the kind of views that Colin has, they seem very childish for somebody of his age. And also, another thing that really kind of annoyed me about Colin was how naive he was about what was really going on in the book. Because, the character of Roy was so clearly psychotic, and yet Colin just doesn't seem to get it. Every time, because in the book, Roy flat out tells Colin that he's killed a few people, and at first Colin thinks he's joking around, which I guess is understandable. I mean, if one of my friends told me that they killed somebody, and I probably would react the same way, thinking they're joking around. But as the story goes on, the character of Roy clearly shows that he's psychotic, and Colin still thinks that Roy's joking around with him, and it just kind of annoyed me how ignorant this character really is to what was actually going on, and it made me almost want to reach in the book somehow and just slap the character. But by the second half of the book, when shit really starts to hit the fan and Colin really kind of starts to wake up, that's when the character of Colin actually did become pretty likable, and by the second half of the book, that's when I was really kind of rooting for the character. But in the first half of the book, I honestly kind of hated this character, and I guess that's kind of the point of the book, though. I mean, the whole point is Colin has some really childish views of the world, but by the second half of the book, he really does kind of grow, and he really does kind of mature throughout the book. So, in a lot of ways, I mean, I guess that's kind of the point of the book, but I don't know, like, the character really didn't work for me in, like, the first half of the book. Now, I know I'm kind of bitching about certain things, and I'm not trying to make it sound like a bad book, because it really isn't a bad book. Like, it's definitely a well-written book. I just thought, like, the second half of the book was a lot stronger than the first half of the book, and, but there are some really effective parts of the book. Like, there's actually a part in the book where you find out what may have drove the character of Roy to become as psychotic as he actually is, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually shed a few tears for this character. Like, it doesn't excuse his actions in the book, but you definitely kind of see what may have drove this character to become as insane as he actually is. And one thing I also liked about the book, being the big horror fan that I am, is the character of Roy is a big fan of horror movies, and you get a lot of really nice horror movie references in this book, which I liked, being that I'm also a big fan of horror movies. And there is actually one part in the book where the character of Colin references one of my favorite Godzilla movies, King Kong vs. Godzilla, but in the part where he references it, he actually doesn't seem to think too highly of that movie, which kind of upset me, being that I'm such a big fan of that movie. But then again, that's just a little gripe I have, only because I love that movie so much. But it was still kind of cool that the movie was still referenced, though, in this book. But yeah, The Voice of the Night, it's not a perfect book, but it's definitely worth a read at least once. So, yeah, that's my review on The Voice of the Night by Dean Koontz, and bye.